Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you to the Interviewing and Hiring Supervisor Training for VPBS. My name is Kimberly Weitzman. I am QA and Training Manager here at VPBS. On the screen, you'll see my email address in case you have any questions about this training. Please feel free to contact either myself or please be in contact with your supervisor if you have any questions about information presented in this particular training. So I do want to welcome all of you new supervisors to VPBS and just first of all, thank you for the work that you do that ultimately positively affects the clients that we serve, as well as provides an orientation and some sense of security to our new employees and our ongoing employees. So just want to remind you what an important job you do and what very essential function you serve here at VPBS. So welcome, 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 and thank you for the hard work that you do. So for today's training, there is a quiz that you will need to complete. Please hang on to that quiz and review it with your supervisor after this training. There will be some red quiz reminders on the slides throughout the training to alert you to quiz questions as we're going through the information. Along with the quiz, you will also need to complete the interviewing and hiring acknowledgement form and turn that into your supervisor, indicating that you have completed this particular training. Before we get into the actual information, I just want to thank Christina Wiley for researching and compiling all of the information that you will see in the training today that I'm presenting. So thank you very much, Christina, for that. So because the hiring process can certainly be overwhelming, the purpose of this training really is to walk you through each individual step in the process of interviewing and hiring new staff to ensure that you know where to go to get questions answered as they come up throughout the interviewing and hiring process. And in the following slides, we're going to review the following objectives. We're going to learn how to identify hiring needs. We will review the process for submitting job approvals and scheduling interviews. We'll be providing some good tips for interviewing potential candidates. We will consider how to decide which candidate best meets your needs. You'll master the process of offering a position to a candidate. You'll learn the importance of coordinating with your region's HR recruiter. And finally, we'll identify best practices to wrap up the hiring process and get that new hire scheduled for orientation. So again, if you don't have that quiz, go ahead and get that in front of you so you can complete that as we go. The other thing that you're going to need as we go through this training is a hiring and process form. This is the form that really walks you through the entire hiring process. It can be found either on the OneDrive, or you should also have a copy of this in your supervisor training binder because there are so many steps involved in interviewing and hiring. This particular hiring process checklist was created to make sure we don't forget any important step. It is your responsibility as the hiring manager to review this form in its entirety to make sure that every step has been completed. Once you've completed the entire form, the document should be sent to your direct supervisor and also provide a copy to your local HR coordinator. So please pause the video, go get the hiring process form and the quiz, as well as the acknowledgement checkoff sheet before you continue with this training so you can complete that as we go. Here's a picture of what the hiring process form looks like. Again, it is located on the OneDrive. You can also find it in your supervisor training binder. Okay, so we will start with, first of all, identifying the need to fill a particular position. So as a supervisor, you will inevitably be tasked with adding new staff to your team. In order to ensure that this need is in fact a need, you will want to ask yourself the following questions. Questions like, how is my current team performing? Is each current team member meeting or exceeding their expected weekly productivity? Consider, is this position that you're thinking about replacing an existing position, or is this going to be a completely brand new position? There's some more questions that you should be asking yourself. Questions like, could that position be covered by existing staff? What would the added position's caseload look like? Can the projected caseload ensure the minimum number of billable hours to meet the position's productivity expectation? And lastly, have I communicated with the development team about projected growth and made plans to hire ahead of time, anticipating the need instead of after we have already identified it as a need? So please stay in contact with your development team. So to start the job approval process, if you have in fact identified a need to hire a new staff or to replace a staff that has left, guess what? There's some more questions that you should be asking yourself to include all of the pertinent information in your request to your direct supervisor. So some more points to consider are, what exactly is the position you're requesting? Is this a full-time or a part-time job? What would their job title be? Like I said, is this a new position or is this a replacement position? Start thinking about, where will this position be located? Is this a community position, a facility position, or a residential or an office-based position? If the position is in a facility or a residential location, you definitely want to include that in your request. Think about what the new hire's caseload is going to look like. Is this caseload, again, able to provide opportunities for expected productivity to be met? Please think about any other important or pertinent information or justification that will solidify your request for additional staff. And on the next slide, Christina has so kindly provided us with an example of what that request might look like. I will also tell you that a copy of this template is also on the O Drive with the other hiring and interviewing forms that you've already been accessing. So just as an example, you would write perhaps an email such as the following: attention to your direct supervisor, with the subject, request for additional hiring staff. Dear whoever, I would like to request approval to post a new full-time TBS position. This position will cover our newest LTC facility, name of the facility. The expected caseload for this position will be approximately X number of individuals. And if there are referrals coming in, or if there is already a wait list, please mention that as well. There are no available staff to assume this caseload. With the influx of referrals, there should be ample opportunity for the new TBS specialist to meet or exceed their productivity should referrals not be adequate to meet job expectations. My plan would be for the additional staff to do XYZ. Thank you for your consideration in this matter, and then sign it with your name. Now, you don't have to do this word for word, but please include all of those pieces of information in your request to your direct supervisor when you are requesting additional staff. So if you are following along on the hiring process form, we have already completed the first two checkboxes. We have identified the need and discussed it with your direct supervisor. And then your supervisor will go on to obtain approval for this position from the executive director. So this is where we are in the process right now. We move on to posting the position. Once you have received approval from your direct supervisor, and they in turn have received approval from the executive director, you will log in to your Paycor recruiting account to submit for CFO approval and to post the position. The website that you see there is recruitingbypaycor.com/login. That is one way to get to the Paycor recruiting website. You may also see the Newton website listed on your hiring process form, both of those websites will get you to the exact same place that you see on the screen. So either use recruitingbypaycor.com/login or the newtonsoftware.com login website that is listed on the hiring process form. They will route you to the same location. Whichever website you go with, please save that link to your favorites bar in your browser so you can easily access it in the future. Also, a good tip is to make sure that you're using Google Chrome as your internet browser. It will work better than it does in Internet Explorer. Also, another reminder that all new supervisors first need to complete the interview and recruiting training with HR prior to posting for approval in regards to job positions on Paycor. That is a quiz question, and on the screen there you see where we are on the hiring process form, where the supervisor submits using either the Paycor website or that Newton website to do that. Once you have logged in to the Recruiting by Paycor website, you will, to submit a job approval, click on the Request Job Approval at the top bar in the Applicant Tracking System or the ATS. Then you will click on Job Template. Then you will pull up a window where you can search, find, and select the job template that you would like to use. Once you find it, click on the radio button next to the job template you'd like to use and click Save. This will pull up the template. You can fill out any missing information and update the job description if that is necessary. A good tip also from Christina is that under the specific hiring needs heading section, you should copy and paste the reasoning for the position that you previously emailed to your supervisor when you originally requested approval to post this particular job. Once you've completed that and your request is submitted, you now just wait until you receive an approval email from Paycor Recruiting before going forward with scheduling or conducting any interviews. And on the screen there, you see an example of what that approval email might look like. You'll see here, Michael Bell said approve. So we can go forward with scheduling and conducting interviews now. So immediately upon receiving that approval email, your region's HR recruiter will start conducting phone screens with potential candidates and will notify you via email when an appropriate match is identified. As far as timeline is considered, please note that the expectation for responding to this email is within 24 hours of receiving it. Okay, so once the HR recruiter has identified some potential candidates, we now want to schedule and conduct those interviews. We're moving right along. So that being said, the most important part of scheduling these interviews is good communication with your HR recruiter. After you have reviewed the candidate's resume and you have communicated your desire to go forward with a particular candidate, an interview will be scheduled in one of those open time slots that you have on your Outlook calendar, and a calendar invite will be sent for you to accept. So please remember that the expectation is that a block of time will be scheduled each Monday on your Outlook calendar from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then again on Mondays from 2 to 3 p.m. at a minimum. So we have open times on our calendars so HR recruiting can schedule those interviews. So again, if you are following along on the hiring process form, we're at the fourth box. We are coordinating with HR in a timely manner to set up those interviews and responding no later than 24 hours in response to those emails. So once that interview has been scheduled, supervisors need to get ready for that interview. So here are some great interview tips to be as prepared as possible for the interview. First of all, know the position you are trying to fill. Be ready to answer questions about the job description. Please review the job description and get as comfortable as you can talking about the particular position. Please also review the applicant's resume and any application that might be in their file prior to them coming to the interview. So you, again, are prepared to ask questions appropriate to that person's experience and you feel comfortable asking those questions. Please arrive on time to the interview as well. Greet your candidates warmly, yet in a professional manner if you are meeting them in person or if you are doing a tele interview. Recommended to set boundaries early in the interview. Let that interviewee know that this interview will not last longer than an hour. And it's also recommended to have those interview template questions already printed out, or you can handwrite or type up your own special questions if you have specific things that you want to ask that particular candidate. So in regards to those interview templates I've been talking about, please print them out prior to the interview and review them so you're ready to ask those questions. You can find them on the O Drive. Just find the most appropriate template based on the position that you are hiring for. And again, if you're following along on the hiring process form, now we are at the fifth box where we are actually hiring the candidates. We have accessed their information on Newton. We're verifying their license with the state board. And we are, again, getting those pre-made interview questions. And then after the interview, we want to remember to send those questions and answers to HR for their records. After the interview has been completed, you want to fill out the HR scorecard in Paycor Recruiting when you are notified by email. And the expectation is that you will complete that scorecard no later than 24 hours from the time you received the email. So at this point, you should ensure that all of the appropriate boxes are checked on your hiring process form thus far. Also, like I said, your interview questions should be scanned and sent to your HR recruiter so they can hang on to them for their records. So you'll repeat that process for all of the candidates that you've identified that you're going to interview. So now it's time to decide if the candidate or candidates you've interviewed are right for the position you are trying to fill. And that is exactly what the next slides will provide suggestions on when you're trying to choose the right person for the job. So here are 9 good tips to help you make an informed decision when you are trying to decide who is right for the position. Think back to the interview and think about the candidate's body language. Look for clues about the candidate in their gestures, in their body language, how they shook your hand, although we're probably not shaking hands now in this time of COVID. But their eye contact and other body language will give you clues about their confidence, about their comfort level in discussing clinical issues, for example. Body language can give us lots of insight into how they're feeling, what kind of a person they are, and if they're even interested in the job that is being discussed in that interview. It's also a great idea to focus on specific experiences and accomplishments of your candidate. A great way to do that is to use what's called the STAR method, S-T-A-R, which stands for the situation, the target, the action, and the result. This is a very behavioral-based way to ask questions or to prompt candidates during an interview to talk about specific situations. Some typical STAR questions or prompts are things like, tell me about a time you had a conflict at work. Asking, can you describe a stressful situation and how you handled it? Can you detail a mistake you made and how you reacted to it? Or prompts like, tell me about a time when you performed well under enormous pressure. The STAR method will really get to the root of what was the situation, what was identified as the specific target problem in the situation, what was the action that that candidate took, and then what was the result of that action that they took. Okay, we want to evaluate the candidate's work ethic as well as their work attitude. So be listening for language that the candidate uses that indicates they may have had difficulty working with colleagues or supervisors in the past. These are team culture killers. It's probably a red flag if all of their star question answers are about conflicts that they had with coworkers or management. Might not be a good fit here at ViaQuest, perhaps. We also want to ask questions about how the candidate handles things like heavy workloads, changing priorities, changes in policies and procedures, and just in general, how they organize their work, how they approach their work on a daily basis. Number 4 is to find out if this candidate is a lifelong learner. It's found that employees who go on to then have great potential in their position are very curious. They want to continuously learn and add new skills and tools to their clinical toolbox, so to speak. And this type of candidate can really grow and become an invaluable resource of experience and knowledge. And that's the kind of employee that we are looking for. Number 5 is a great idea to get feedback from other people who weren't in the interview, but still interacted with the candidate, or perhaps you have chosen to have other team members interview the client with you. That is sometimes a great way to brainstorm regarding the hiring decision. We can also ask perhaps the front desk employee, how did the candidate treat them? How did they greet them? Were they professional? Were they polite? Were they on time? Questions like that. If you happen to give the candidate a tour of the office and they were introduced to other coworkers, ask those other coworkers, what was their first impression? Even though they only briefly met, they probably have some kind of opinion on that candidate that could be valuable, something perhaps that you missed. Another great way to identify appropriate candidates to hire is to really ask the candidate about something they're passionate about. Conduct the interview in a more conversational and open way, as opposed to a question and answer session. Once you've found out what the candidate is interested in, what they are passionate about, what they're comfortable and confident about, work those topics into your questions and into the conversation that you're having, because you're more likely to get some valuable information and to have some important observations about them by asking them what is most important to them, what makes them tick, so to speak. Number 7 is a suggestion to give the candidate a project to work on or a quick problem to solve, as an example. The idea of giving candidates a project or a problem to solve isn't so much about the end result or what was the decision that they came to at the end of problem solving, but how they arrived at that decision or how they approached the problem. It's going to give you some insight into how they process information, how they go about finding solutions. Are they seeking out information from other team members or seeking advice from supervisors, or are they trying to do everything on their own? It will give you a lot of clues as to how they may be on the job when they're faced with a problem. Number 8 is to pay attention to the questions that the candidate asks. Yes, the questions that you, the interviewer, ask are important, and the candidate's answers to those questions are important, but it's equally important to see what kind of questions the candidate has. All good candidates should have questions about the job, about ViaQuest, about VPBS, and about our culture here. That shows that they have thought about the position. They are wondering what it might be like. They're curious to know more. Think about, are their questions insightful? Are they really thinking deeply about the position, or are there questions, things that could be answered simply by looking at our website? Consider if this candidate is giving some kind of indication as to how enthusiastic they are about the role. Usually the more deep the questions go, the more interested they really are about that particular position. You can really gain meaningful information about their level of interest, the way they diagnose and approach problems, how they process data, and more, simply by the questions that they're asking you. So after you have considered all that information, it really boils down to these 5 questions to ask yourself before you offer the role to any candidate. Ask yourself, can this candidate do this job? Are they motivated to do the job? Are they interested in continuing to learn new skills? Is this candidate coachable and open to constructive criticism and suggestions? Do you think they would be a good fit for your team culture? Also, please make sure that you look just beyond the skills and how the candidate looks on paper. The best candidates should have the most necessary skills, but also the potential to continue to grow, as well as be a good fit relationship-wise and culturally with the rest of your team. So far, we've been talking about interviews, assuming that they are in person. But now that we are in COVID days, we very well may be conducting tele interviews. So here are some specific suggestions or considerations when you are conducting tele interviews. The candidate may not have ever participated in a tele interview, so we want to set them up for success. And we also want to appear professional on our end as well as the interviewer. So consider perhaps hanging up a sign on your door indicating do not disturb so that you are not interrupted. Likewise, think about silencing your cell phone if you can. Put your office phone on do not disturb. Make sure your email and other programs on your computer are closed to really minimize distractions. It's always a good idea, no matter what you're doing, to conduct a test run of your equipment to make sure that your computer, your camera, your speakers, everything is in working order and ready to go for the tele interview. Like I said, you want to set up the candidate for success. They may not have ever done a tele interview before. So please provide the candidate with information about what they will need to participate in the interview. What kind of computer? Is there an app that they need to download? Do they need to create a profile or an account first? And alert them to the names and positions of who will be interviewing them and any other important information that they need to know to be successful. Likewise, send the interview invite to the candidate as soon as possible so they can take all those steps to be prepared. And you, as the interviewer, please be as professional and personable as you would be as if they were sitting right in front of you in your office. The same etiquette applies. So once you have completed your interviews, whether they are in person or whether they are over Zoom or GoToMeeting, on the average, you should be able to identify the candidate that you want to hire within 1 day of completing all of your interviews that are scheduled. Please make sure to have a discussion with your direct supervisor about your choice. Just to make sure that they have no concerns about that particular candidate that you might have missed. After approval from your supervisor, you can then contact your candidate and make them a verbal offer for the position. But whether they accept or not, please share that information with your recruiter so that if they do decline the position, the recruiter can then continue recruiting for that particular job. So if you, again, are following along on your hiring process form, we are on checkbox number 6, getting approval to hire that selected candidate from either the clinical director, the director of nursing, or the executive director. Oops. Okay, so once a verbal offer is made, you should provide the candidate with a potential start date. And that particular start date should match with the QA and training manager schedule that you can check on the O drive. So please reference this before offering a start date to the candidate. And if you are unsure of how to interpret the schedule, please check with the QA and training manager first. As you are onboarding this new hire, we will need to complete the credentialing request form, which is on the reverse of the hiring process form. In order to complete the credentialing form, you'll need to ask these 4 questions of the candidate: their birth date, the place that they were born, the city and state where they were born, and if applicable, we'll need to know their Medicaid number, as well as verify that NPI number at www.npinumberlookup.org. And that website, again, is also provided on the credentialing request form in case you need it in the future. So now, again, just keep following the next steps on the new hire process form. The 8th box is to contact, the 9th box is to contact HR to send an offer letter. HR will send that offer letter to the selected candidate, as well as with background check forms, driving record forms, and W-9 forms. So we just continue down that form. Another step that you'll need to do is to complete the remainder of the new hires information by completing their onboarding by going to careworks-tech.service-now.com/MSP. After you log on to that careworks-tech.service-now.com/MSP site, you will then click on request to continue onboarding that new hire. Okay, we're getting close. We have almost completed the hiring process form and almost have hired that new candidate. So once the written offer letter has been signed by our new employee and returned, the following steps should be completed. Again, complete the credentialing form, which is the reverse of the hiring process form. You will need the information collected during the verbal offer phase to complete this form. Once you have completed the credentialing form, please send it to Courtney Moorhead at ViaQuestInc.com. That is also listed on the credentialing form as well, in case you need her email in the future. Now we need to get our new hire set up for orientation. So you want to schedule orientation with the QA and training manager, as well as HR via email, and then create an orientation schedule unique for that new hire, including the dates, the times, the locations they need to be, as well as any shadowing information, who they will be shadowing, where they will be shadowing, anything they need to bring to be successful in shadowing. Additionally, you will email Michael Bell for the most up-to-date productivity spreadsheet in regards to that new position we just filled. And please be sure to inform Michael Bell of the expected start date of that particular new hire. So again, on the hiring process form, we're working on numbers 12, 13, and 14. That completes the hiring process form once you have notified Michael Bell of the expected start date. And you'll see that right there on the screen. Okay, so now that you have officially hired your new staff, it's time to move them forward with the orientation process. And again, this is where supervisors are so important to helping new team members to feel welcome, to feel supported, to know what is expected of them during orientation as they are getting comfortable in their new position. The more comfortable they are, the more approachable you are, much more likely that that employee will feel comfortable and safe, as well as experience satisfaction in their new job, and hopefully stay with ViaQuest for years to come. And again, go on to become that valuable source of experience as well as information that will ultimately benefit the clients that we serve. So I appreciate your attention during this hiring and interviewing training. Again, please complete that quiz, hang on to it for your own review, as well as to review with your supervisor. Please also complete the acknowledgement checkoff form and turn that into your supervisor. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to either contact myself or your direct supervisor when it comes to hiring as well as interviewing. So thank you so much.